A white bank manager called the police on a black girl, unaware that the child's mother was the CEO of the institution. This act of prejudice triggered a chain of events that exposed the layers of discrimination still ingrained in our society. What began as a simple day would turn into a battle of power, dignity, and justice. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. On a bright Tuesday morning in Atlanta, 13-year-old Maya Johnson stepped off the city bus, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and nerves. The crisp autumn air filled her lungs as she adjusted her backpack and smoothed down her navy blue Westlake Academy uniform. In her hand, she clutched a thick white envelope containing $800, money she had meticulously saved from birthday gifts, weekend babysitting jobs, and months of carefully preserved allowance. This wasn't just money to Maya, it represented independence. For months, she had been begging her mother, Angela Silver Johnson, to let her open her first bank account. "Mom, I can handle this," she had insisted during breakfast just yesterday. "I've saved enough. I've researched everything online." Angela, always busy with meetings at Johnson Holdings, had finally relented with a skeptical smile. "Prove to me you're responsible enough," she had said, signing the permission letter before rushing off to work. Now, standing on the sidewalk outside Southern National Bank, Maya felt the weight of that challenge. She checked her phone. 9:30, right when the bank opened. Perfect timing. She had deliberately chosen to visit during school hours when her mother thought she was on a field trip. Maya wanted to surprise her with the completed paperwork at dinner. The imposing glass building gleamed in the morning sunlight, its polished windows reflecting the bustling street behind her. Maya took a deep breath, remembering the advice from her economics teacher. Walk in with confidence. Speak clearly. You have every right to be there. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and straightened her shoulders. Through the envelope's paper, she could feel the edges of the bills. $20 notes from Mrs. Thompson for watching her twins, $50 checks from her grandmother, and singles she'd saved from lunch money. Each bill represented sacrifice and patience. The glass doors of Southern National Bank stood before her like a gateway to adulthood. Maya pushed them open, feeling the rush of cool, air-conditioned air against her face. Inside, the marble floors gleamed under bright fluorescent lights. The space buzzed with quiet activity, the soft clicking of keyboards, hushed conversations, and the occasional ring of a phone. Maya swallowed hard, suddenly aware of how young she looked compared to the adults in business attire moving purposefully through the lobby. The envelope felt heavier in her hand as she stepped forward, her school shoes making soft tapping sounds against the polished floor. She was entering a world that felt cold and unfamiliar, but she was determined to prove, mostly to herself, that she belonged. Inside Southern National Bank, the air felt crisp and sterile, filled with the muted hum of computers and the soft shuffle of well-dressed adults moving with purpose. The marble floors gleamed under fluorescent lights, reflecting the serious faces of customers waiting in orderly lines. Maya Johnson took a deep breath, absorbing the atmosphere that seemed designed to intimidate. Polished counters, security cameras watching from above, and the quiet efficiency of money-changing hands. Her palms grew slightly damp as she clutched her white envelope tighter. Despite the nervousness fluttering in her stomach, Maya straightened her Westlake Academy uniform and approached the long marble counter with determination. Her hands trembled slightly, but she kept her chin held high, just as her mother had taught her. Behind the counter stood Linda Brown, the branch manager, whose sharp eyes immediately assessed the young girl approaching her station. Linda's perfectly pressed suit and tight bun projected authority as she watched Maya place the thick envelope on the counter. "Can I help you?" Linda asked, her tone already tinged with impatience before Maya had even spoken. "I'd like to open my first bank account," Maya replied, her voice soft but clear. She pushed the envelope forward. "I've saved $800. Linda's gaze narrowed, her perfectly shaped eyebrows arching as she glanced from the envelope to the 13-year-old standing before her. The manager made no move to take the money or offer assistance. "A young girl like you, with this much cash?" Linda questioned, her voice laced with suspicion. She looked pointedly at Maya's uniform, then back at her face. Where exactly did all this money come from? Several customers in line behind Maya shifted uncomfortably. Jennifer Davis, a teller at the adjacent window, glanced over with nervous interest, her fingers pausing over her keyboard as she watched her superior's interaction with the young customer. "I've been saving for 3 years," Maya explained, reaching into her backpack. "I have my school ID and a letter from my mother explaining—" "That's quite a story," Linda interrupted, not bothering to look at the documents Maya was retrieving. The manager's voice carried across the quiet bank floor, drawing more attention. "We take financial security very seriously at Southern National, very seriously indeed." The branch manager's tone suggested she'd already made up her mind about the situation. Maya felt her cheeks growing warm as other customers began to stare, but she stood her ground, remembering how proud her mother had been when she'd announced her plan to open this account. "I can explain everything," Maya insisted, her voice wavering slightly, but her resolve intact. Heat rushed to Maya Johnson's cheeks, painting them a deep crimson as she felt every eye in the bank turn toward her. Despite the embarrassment burning through her body, she squared her shoulders and lifted her chin, determined not to be dismissed. "I've been saving this money for 3 years, Mom," Maya explained, her voice wavering slightly but growing stronger with each word. "Every birthday gift, every weekend I spent babysitting for the Wilsons down the street. And all my allowance, I can prove it's mine." With trembling fingers, she reached into her Westlake Academy blazer pocket and produced her school identification card, the plastic still new and shiny from the start of the term. Next to it, she placed a neatly folded letter written on cream stationery. "My mom wrote this permission letter. She's at work right now, but you can call her," the 13-year-old offered, sliding both items across the marble countertop toward Linda Brown. The branch manager barely glanced at the documents, her thin lips pressed into a tight line of disbelief. Her manicured fingers pushed the school ID and letter back toward Maya without even picking them up. $800 is a significant amount for someone your age," Linda stated, her tone clipped and clinical. "We have protocols for unusual deposits, especially when they come from unexpected sources." The implication hung in the air, heavy and unmistakable. Maya felt her throat tighten as she realized what was happening. This wasn't about protocols. It was about who she was and what Linda thought when she saw her. "But I have ID and—" Maya started, her voice barely above a whisper now. Linda cut her off with a raised hand. "I'm going to have to call the police," she announced, reaching for the telephone on her desk. "This can't be yours. There's simply no way." The words struck Maya like shards of ice, each syllable piercing through her confidence. She watched in stunned silence as the manager's fingers punched the numbers on the keypad, the clicking sounds echoing in her ears. "No, please," Maya pleaded, fighting back tears that threatened to spill. "Just call my mom, Angela Silver Johnson. She can verify everything." But Linda was already speaking into the receiver, her back half turned away from the young girl, as if she were no longer worth acknowledging. Maya stood frozen, clutching the edge of the counter, watching her dream of opening her first bank account transform into a nightmare before her eyes. The envelope with her savings, the physical manifestation of years of patience and hard work, sat between them like evidence of a crime she hadn't committed. Panic fluttered in Maya Johnson's chest like a trapped bird. Her hands trembled as she reached for her school ID again, desperate to prove herself. "Please, just look at my documents," she pleaded, her voice cracking. "My mom signed everything. I've been saving for 3 years." Linda Brown barely glanced at Maya before turning away, her posture rigid with dismissal. The manager's fingers tapped impatiently on the marble counter as she reached for the phone, acting as if the 13-year-old had become invisible. This is procedure," Linda stated flatly to no one in particular, her back now turned to the young girl. Jennifer Davis stood frozen behind her computer terminal, her eyes darting nervously between her boss and the distressed teenager. The teller's fingers hovered over her keyboard, clearly wanting to intervene, but too afraid to challenge Linda's authority. She adjusted her name tag, swallowed hard, and then looked down at her screen, silently complying with the unfolding injustice. "I can verify her information if—" Jennifer began in a whisper. "That won't be necessary." Linda cut her off sharply, causing the younger employee to shrink back. Maya felt her world tilting sideways. The pristine bank lobby suddenly seemed vast and hostile, the fluorescent lights overhead harsh and exposing. She clutched her Westlake Academy uniform jacket tighter around herself, as if it might shield her from the growing humiliation. Around them, the quiet hum of bank business slowed to a halt. A businessman in a charcoal suit paused mid-transaction, his eyebrows rising as he observed the scene. An elderly woman clutched her purse tighter, watching with pursed lips. A college student in the corner stopped filling out deposit slips and pulled out his smartphone, discreetly aiming it toward the confrontation. Within moments, several other customers had their devices out, recording the interaction. Whispers rippled through the lobby like wind through tall grass. "Is that girl in trouble? Why aren't they checking her ID? Someone should call her parents." The atmosphere in Southern National Bank transformed from sterile calm to charged tension. Maya could feel the weight of dozens of eyes on her, some curious, some judgmental, a few sympathetic. The silence between Linda's clipped words felt deafening, punctuated only by the soft electronic tones of phones recording and the distant hum of the air conditioning. Maya's throat tightened as tears threatened to spill. She had arrived so confident, so proud of her savings, so ready to take this step toward adulthood. Now she stood exposed, her dignity stripped away under the collective gaze of strangers who were documenting her humiliation for the world to see. Within minutes, the glass doors of Southern National Bank swung open, and Officer Maria Sanchez strode in with purposeful steps. Her badge caught the fluorescent lights, sending small flashes across the polished marble floor. The officer's eyes quickly scanned the scene before landing on Maya Johnson, the 13-year-old girl clutching her documents with trembling hands. "What seems to be the problem here?" Officer Sanchez asked, her voice carrying across the now silent bank lobby. Linda Brown immediately stepped forward, pointing accusingly at Maya. "This child came in with $800 in cash. No ID except a school card. The story doesn't add up," the manager explained, her tone suggesting she'd already determined Maya's guilt. Officer Sanchez turned to Maya, her expression stern and unyielding. "Where did you get this money, young lady?" she demanded, barely glancing at the school identification and letter Maya desperately held out. "I saved it, ma'am," Maya answered, her voice barely above a whisper. "Birthday gifts, babysitting money, allowance. My mum wrote a letter explaining—" "And where is your mother now?" the officer interrupted, taking the envelope from the counter and peering inside at the neatly stacked bills. Maya swallowed hard. "At work. She's in meetings today. That's why I came alone." The humiliation burned hot in Maya's chest as she felt dozens of eyes watching her. Some customers had stopped their transactions entirely, openly staring at the scene unfolding before them. Others pretended not to notice, while stealing glances from the corners of their eyes. "Do you have any idea how suspicious this looks?" Officer Sanchez continued, flipping through the bills. "Kids your age don't just walk around with this kind of cash." Maya's throat tightened, making it difficult to speak. She could feel tears threatening to spill, but she fought them back, determined not to cry in front of everyone. Jennifer Davis, the teller, stood awkwardly behind her manager, occasionally nodding in agreement with Linda's assertions. A middle-aged woman waiting in line whispered something to her companion, both looking at Maya with undisguised pity. An elderly man shook his head in disapproval, though whether at Maya or the situation itself wasn't clear. "I just wanted to open an account," Maya managed to say, her Westlake Academy uniform suddenly feeling like a costume that failed to provide the respectability she had counted on. "To show my mom I could be responsible with money." Officer Sanchez sighed, pulling out a small notepad. "I'm going to need your full name, address, and your mother's contact information," she said, treating Maya as if she were already guilty of some unspecified crime. The bank's atmosphere had transformed from professional efficiency to uncomfortable spectacle, with Maya at its unwilling center. Maya's hands trembled as she pulled her smartphone from the pocket of her Westlake Academy uniform. Tears blurred her vision, making it difficult to see the screen as she typed a desperate message to her mother. "Mom, they think I did something bad. Please come." She glanced nervously at Officer Sanchez, who was now speaking in hushed tones, with Linda Brown near the manager's desk, both occasionally throwing suspicious glances her way. Across town, in the glass-walled conference room of Johnson Holdings, downtown headquarters, Angela Silver Johnson felt her device vibrate against the polished mahogany table. The CEO had been midway through a quarterly review with her executive team when she glanced down at the message. Her heart plummeted instantly. "We need to reschedule," Angela announced, rising from her chair with such sudden authority that no one dared question her. The room fell silent as she gathered her belongings, her mind racing through worst-case scenarios. Maya had never sent a message like this before. Her daughter was responsible, cautious, and had been so proud about opening her first bank account today. As she strode down the corridor, Angela's fingers flew across her phone screen, first calling Maya back with no answer, then dialing her head of legal affairs. "James, I need you and Sarah at Southern National Bank immediately. My daughter is there and something's wrong." Her voice remained measured, but carried an unmistakable urgency that mobilized her team instantly. Back at the bank, Maya sat alone on a cold leather chair, feeling the stares of customers and employees alike. Jennifer Davis, the teller who had first alerted Linda to the suspicious young girl with cash, kept glancing over nervously, as if unsure whether she'd done the right thing. The 13-year-old clutched her envelope tighter, the money she'd saved for years now feeling like evidence of some crime she hadn't committed. Angela's sleek black vehicle screeched to a halt outside the bank 15 minutes later. She barely waited for her driver to fully stop before exiting, her two attorneys following closely behind. The CEO's mind was focused on a single thought: reaching her daughter. As she approached the building, Angela caught sight of Maya through the glass doors, sitting small and alone. The sight of her child, shoulders hunched, eyes downcast, triggered something primal in her. The woman who negotiated billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat felt a surge of protective fury unlike anything in her professional life. Angela straightened her designer suit jacket, took a deep breath, and pushed open the doors of Southern National Bank, unaware that her entrance would soon change everything. The tension in Southern National Bank grew palpable as Linda Brown stood firmly behind her counter, arms crossed. "I've been in banking for 15 years, she declared, her voice carrying across the marble floor. "I know when something doesn't add up. And a 13-year-old with $800 in cash raises serious concerns." Maya Johnson sat on a nearby chair, her Westlake Academy uniform suddenly feeling too tight around her neck. She clutched her school ID and her mother's letter in trembling hands, documents that Linda had barely glanced at before dismissing. Jennifer Davis nodded vigorously from her teller station. "It's standard procedure," she added, her voice pitched higher than usual. The young teller kept shooting sideways glances at her manager, clearly hoping her support would be noticed. "We have to be careful with large cash deposits, especially from," she hesitated, "unexpected sources." Officer Sanchez stood nearby, her notepad out, occasionally jotting down information while keeping a watchful eye on Maya. The girl's shoulders had begun to slump, her earlier confidence crumbling under the weight of the adult's suspicion. "She's just a child," whispered one customer to another, phones still recording the scene. Then, from the small crowd that had gathered, a middle-aged man in a business suit stepped forward. "Excuse me," he said, his voice firm but measured. "I couldn't help noticing something. Why didn't you even check her ID in the system?" The question landed like a stone in still water. Several customers murmured in agreement, and heads turned toward Linda. "Sir, bank procedures are not up for public debate," Linda replied, her cheeks flushing slightly. "We have protocols." Protocols that include verifying identification before calling the police, the man pressed. I've been banking here for years, and I've never seen someone's documents ignored so completely. Linda bristled visibly, her posture becoming even more rigid. I made a judgment call based on experience, she insisted, but her voice had lost some of its authority. Jennifer fidgeted with her computer mouse, suddenly looking uncertain about her alliance. The teller's eager nodding had ceased, replaced by a nervous glance toward the security cameras in the corners of the ceiling. Maya looked up, a tiny spark of hope rekindling as she witnessed someone finally speaking up for her. She straightened her back slightly, watching as other customers began to nod in agreement with the man's question. Officer Sanchez's expression shifted subtly as she observed the changing dynamics in the room. The once united front of authority was beginning to fracture under public scrutiny. The bank's atmosphere had transformed from sterile efficiency to charged confrontation, and no one noticed the sleek black vehicle that had just pulled up outside, or the determined woman stepping out of it. The glass doors of Southern National Bank parted with a decisive whoosh, drawing all eyes in the lobby. Angela Silver Johnson stood in the entrance, her tailored navy suit and confident posture immediately commanding attention. Flanked by two sharp-looking attorneys with leather portfolios tucked under their arms, she surveyed the scene with calculated calm. The hushed conversations died instantly, replaced by a heavy silence that seemed to press against everyone's ears. Maya's eyes widened with relief. "Mom," she whispered, her voice barely audible, yet somehow cutting through the tension. Angela moved with purpose across the marble floor, her heels clicking rhythmically like a countdown. The attorneys matched her stride, their expressions professionally neutral but unmistakably ready for battle. Several customers stepped back, creating an unconscious path toward the confrontation at the counter. Linda Brown's transformation was immediate and dramatic. The branch manager's face, previously flushed with righteous indignation, now drained of color until she resembled the stark white papers scattered across her desk. Recognition flickered in her eyes. She knew exactly who had just walked in. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words emerged. "I believe you're holding my daughter against her will," Angela stated, her voice controlled yet razor-sharp. She didn't raise her volume, she didn't need to, but in questioning the legitimacy of her savings without proper procedure. Officer Sanchez straightened her posture, suddenly aware that the routine call she'd responded to was rapidly evolving into something far more complex. The policewoman's hand moved unconsciously to adjust her badge, a nervous gesture that betrayed her growing discomfort. "Ma'am, we're simply following protocol when—" Linda began, her voice noticeably higher than before. "And protocol," one of the attorneys interjected, opening his portfolio. "Would that be the same protocol that requires examining identification before making accusations, or perhaps the protocol about minors' rights during questioning?" Jennifer Davis, watching from behind the counter, took an instinctive step backward. The teller's earlier eagerness to support her boss had evaporated, replaced by the dawning realization that she'd aligned herself with the wrong side of this confrontation. Around them, the bank had grown eerily still. Customers who had been conducting ordinary transactions now stood frozen, witnessing the power dynamic shift dramatically before their eyes. Several still held their phones aloft, recording every moment of the unfolding scene. Maya stood taller now, drawing strength from her mother's presence. The teenager's earlier tears had dried, leaving behind a newfound resolve that straightened her shoulders and lifted her chin. Angela placed a protective hand on her daughter's shoulder, her eyes never leaving Linda's face. "Now," she said with deadly quietness, "I suggest we discuss how this situation will be resolved." Angela Silver Johnson's presence transformed the atmosphere of Southern National Bank instantly. The CEO of Johnson Holdings moved with deliberate grace, her designer suit a stark contrast to the institutional blandness surrounding her. She locked eyes with Maya across the room, the invisible thread between mother and daughter pulling taut with shared understanding. In that silent exchange, Angela read every tear, every moment of humiliation her 13-year-old had endured. "My daughter texted me," Angela announced, her voice calm yet carrying to every corner of the suddenly silent bank. "Now I'd like to understand why a child with proper identification is being treated like a criminal." Officer Maria Sanchez straightened her uniform, clearly recognizing the shift in power dynamics. "Ma'am, we received a call about suspicious activity." "Suspicious?" Angela cut in, her tone razor-sharp despite its quietness. "Define suspicious." Officer Sanchez. Linda Brown stepped forward, her earlier confidence evaporating under Angela's unwavering gaze. The amount of cash. A child her age. We have protocols that include checking identification," asked one of the attorneys flanking Angela, a tall woman who pulled out a tablet displaying banking regulations. "Because our understanding is that you refused to even examine her school ID or the authorization letter from her mother." Linda's mouth opened and closed, words failing her. I thought, you thought," Angela echoed, each word precise as a surgeon's cut. "But you didn't verify. You didn't follow your own bank's procedures." The second attorney pointed toward the security cameras. "We'll be requesting that footage immediately." Around them, at least 5 customers held their smartphones aloft, recording every word of the exchange. Jennifer Davis, the teller who had backed her manager's decision, shrank behind her counter, suddenly fascinated by her computer screen. Maya watched her mother with a mixture of relief and awe. Angela had always been powerful in their home, but seeing her command this space, where moments ago Maya had felt so small, was transformative. "My daughter earned every dollar in that envelope," Angela continued, placing a protective hand on Maya's shoulder. "Birthday gifts, babysitting money, allowance saved for years. She came here to learn financial responsibility, and instead received a lesson in prejudice." Linda's face flushed crimson. "That's not what happened." "The evidence suggests otherwise," Angela replied, gesturing toward the witnesses still recording. "And I suspect the board of directors will be very interested in reviewing that evidence, particularly since Johnson Holdings maintains a significant ownership stake in this institution." The revelation rippled through the bank like an electric current, charging the air with shocked whispers and widened eyes. The tension in Southern National Bank was palpable as Angela Silver Johnson confronted Linda Brown and Officer Sanchez. The standoff had drawn the attention of every person in the building, customers frozen mid-transaction, tellers watching with wide eyes, security guards shifting uncomfortably. Suddenly, the main doors burst open. Robert Williams, the bank president, strode in with purpose, his tailored suit and commanding presence immediately drawing all eyes. He had received 3 urgent calls from board members in the last 10 minutes, all alerting him to a situation spiraling out of control. "What's happening here?" Robert asked, his voice cutting through the silence. His gaze swept from Maya's tear-streaked face to Angela's rigid posture, then to Linda's increasingly defensive stance. Angela turned to face him, her voice measured but carrying throughout the lobby. "Mr. Williams, I believe your branch manager has made a serious error in judgment today. She accused my 13-year-old daughter of theft without checking her identification or contacting me." "And who exactly are you?" Linda interjected, still clinging to her authority despite the attorneys flanking Angela. A cold smile touched Angela's lips. "I'm Angela Silver Johnson, CEO of Johnson Holdings." She paused, letting the weight of her next words settle. "Our family owns 58% of Southern National Bank's shares." The revelation landed like a thunderclap. Whispers erupted throughout the lobby. Jennifer Davis's clipboard slipped from her fingers, clattering loudly on the marble floor. Officer Sanchez took an instinctive step backward. Robert's expression shifted from concern to alarm. He knew exactly who Angela was. He reported to her at quarterly board meetings. "Ms. Johnson, I had no idea your daughter was involved. This is completely unacceptable." Linda's face drained of color as the implications washed over her. "That's impossible," she whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. "I can confirm that the Johnson family is indeed our principal shareholder," Robert announced, addressing everyone in the bank, "and Maya should have been treated with the same respect we show any customer." Maya watched as Linda's authority crumbled before her eyes. The manager's mouth opened and closed, no words emerging. The same woman who had dismissed her so easily now looked small and frightened. One of Angela's attorneys stepped forward, presenting documentation about banking regulations regarding minors opening accounts. "Your own policy states that with proper identification and parental consent, which Maya had, she should have been assisted, not accused." Robert nodded grimly, then turned to Linda. "My office, now." To Angela, he added, "Mrs. Johnson, I cannot apologize enough. I assure you this will be addressed immediately." Angela placed a protective arm around Maya's shoulders. "Oh, I'm counting on it," she replied, her voice carrying the quiet certainty of someone who knew exactly how much power she wielded. By morning, the videos had spread like wildfire. Maya Johnson's confrontation at Southern National Bank was everywhere. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, each platform ablaze with footage captured by stunned customers. The hashtag, #BankingWhileBlack, trended nationwide, alongside Justice for Maya and Southern National Shame. News vans lined the street outside the bank's main branch, reporters clutching microphones as they delivered updates against the backdrop of the now infamous glass doors. Local stations interrupted regular programming for special reports, while national networks picked up the story by afternoon. "This is about more than my daughter," Angela Silver Johnson told reporters gathered outside Johnson Holdings. "It's about every child who's ever been made to feel they don't belong." Her composed demeanor only amplified her words, the CEO's measured tone carrying more weight than any shouted accusation could. Maya's phone buzzed constantly with notifications. Classmates from Westlake Academy sent messages of support, while strangers across the country shared similar experiences. The 13-year-old sat cross-legged on her bed, overwhelmed by the attention yet finding unexpected comfort in knowing she wasn't alone. At Johnson Holdings, Angela convened an emergency meeting with her executive team and legal counsel. "This is personal, but it's also an opportunity," she said, tapping her manicured nails against the polished conference table. "We own 53% of Southern National. It's time we use that influence." By afternoon, Angela had issued a formal statement announcing a comprehensive internal investigation into the bank's practices. "We will examine every complaint, every policy, and every training protocol," the statement read. "Discrimination has no place in banking or anywhere else." Inside Southern National's corporate offices, Robert Williams paced nervously, fielding calls from board members and watching the company's stock price fluctuate with each news update. The bank president had already placed Linda Brown on administrative leave, but the damage control was just beginning. Officer Maria Sanchez faced her own media scrutiny. The police department issued a brief statement promising to review the incident, but video clips of her dismissive attitude toward Maya had already become fodder for discussions about law enforcement bias. That evening, as Angela helped Maya prepare for bed, the girl looked up from her phone with tired eyes. "Mom, someone from California said they're organizing a protest at their local Southern National branch." Angela sat beside her daughter, gently taking the device and setting it aside. "This isn't what I wanted for you," she said softly. "But sometimes, sweetheart, our hardest moments create the most important changes." Maya nodded, understanding for the first time the true weight of her mother's influence, and perhaps her own. The security footage told a damning story. Frame by frame, the video showed Linda Brown dismissively pushing aside Maya Johnson's school ID and the letter from her mother without even a cursory glance. Jennifer Davis could be seen in the background, nervously nodding along with her superior's actions while occasionally glancing at the documents that might have verified Maya's story in seconds. "This is a clear violation of our customer verification protocols," Robert Williams stated during an emergency board meeting, his face grim as the footage played on the conference room screen. The bank president tapped his pen against the polished table, the rhythmic sound punctuating the tense silence. Within days, other customers began sharing their experiences. A middle-aged black entrepreneur described how Linda had questioned the legitimacy of his business loan application despite his perfect credit score. An elderly Hispanic woman recounted being directed to the Spanish-speaking teller even though she'd requested service in English. A teenage South Asian boy told reporters how Jennifer had called her manager when he tried to deposit his first paycheck. "We've identified 17 incidents in the past year alone," announced the head of the internal investigation team, spreading documents across Robert's desk, all involving minority customers, all handled by the same staff members. At Johnson Holdings downtown, Angela Silver Johnson reviewed the mounting evidence with her legal team. "This isn't just about Maya anymore," she said, studying the testimonials. "This is systemic." Throughout Southern National Bank, whispers of reorganization spread like wildfire. Employees huddled near water coolers, their voices dropping whenever management walked by. "Linda's finished," one loan officer murmured to his colleague. "And the question is, who takes her place?" In the break room, 3 department managers discreetly discussed their chances for promotion. "I've always followed proper verification protocols," one boasted, eyeing the others competitively. Linda's office, once a hub of activity, became eerily quiet. Staff who had previously competed for her attention now found reasons to avoid her floor entirely. The branch manager sat alone, watching through glass walls as her empire crumbled. Her phone remained silent. No calls from upper management, no reassurances about her position. Jennifer Davis found herself increasingly isolated as well. Colleagues who had witnessed her eager compliance with Linda's decisions now kept their distance, afraid of being associated with the scandal. The teller spent her lunch breaks alone, scrolling through news articles about the incident on her smartphone, seeing her own face in the background of viral videos. As pressure mounted from shareholders, community leaders, and the media, Robert Williams called for an emergency restructuring plan. "Southern National Bank will emerge from this stronger," he announced to the board, though the uncertainty in his voice betrayed his concern about just how deep the problems might run. Officer Maria Sanchez sat rigidly in the precinct's conference room, facing 3 stern-faced internal affairs investigators. The footage of her interaction with Maya Johnson played on the wall-mounted screen, each moment of her dismissive behavior magnified for scrutiny. "You never properly examined her identification," noted the lead investigator, pausing the video. "Standard protocol requires verification before any accusation." Maria's throat tightened. In 15 years on the force, she'd never faced disciplinary action. Now, her career hung in the balance because of what she'd initially dismissed as a routine call. "The bank manager seemed certain," she offered weakly, "and that was enough for you." The question lingered painfully in the air. The investigation into Maria's conduct opened a floodgate. Within days, 23 similar complaints surfaced, all involving young minorities questioned without proper procedure. The pattern was undeniable, and the precinct found itself under intense public scrutiny. Local news stations parked vans outside the police headquarters. Community leaders demanded accountability. The Johnson case had exposed systemic issues that could no longer be ignored. At home, Maria scrolled through social media, wincing at comments calling for her badge. Her children asked why people were angry at her. The officer had no easy answers. "I was just doing my job," she whispered to her empty living room. But was she? The question haunted her through sleepless nights. She'd responded to Linda Brown's call with assumptions already formed. She'd seen a 13-year-old girl with cash and immediately suspected wrongdoing, never considering that Maya might simply be a responsible young person opening her first bank account. 3 weeks after the incident, Atlanta's police chief held a press conference on the precinct steps, flanked by community leaders and city officials. He announced comprehensive reforms. Today marks a new chapter for our department, he declared to the assembled reporters. We're implementing mandatory training focused on youth interactions, implicit bias recognition, and proper verification procedures. The reforms included body camera review protocols, community oversight panels, and partnerships with local schools. Officers would receive 40 hours of specialized training with quarterly refresher courses. For Maria Sanchez, the outcome was bittersweet. She avoided termination but received a 30-day suspension without pay and mandatory retraining. More painfully, she was reassigned from patrol to desk duty upon her return. As she cleared out her patrol car, Maria found herself wondering about Maya Johnson. The girl's frightened face remained vivid in her memory. She considered reaching out to apologize but hesitated, unsure if her words could repair the damage done. The Johnson case had changed everything, not just for Maya and her mother, but for an entire police department forced to confront its failings and commit to meaningful change. Maya Johnson's return to Westlake Academy felt like walking into a different world. The hallways fell silent as she passed, only to erupt in whispers once she was out of earshot. Some classmates approached with wide eyes and endless questions about the viral videos they'd seen. Others kept their distance, unsure how to interact with someone who had suddenly become a local celebrity. "Is it true your mom owns the bank?" asked Tiffany, a girl who had barely spoken to Maya before. "My parents were talking about it all weekend." The 13-year-old tried to maintain her composure, answering politely, but feeling increasingly uncomfortable with the attention. Her mathematics teacher even used the incident as an impromptu lesson on compound interest and banking, causing Maya to sink lower in her seat as 24 pairs of eyes turned toward her. During lunch, she found refuge with her small group of friends who treated her normally, though even they couldn't help sneaking glances at their smartphones whenever a new notification about the incident appeared. The school administration had asked reporters to stay off campus, but that didn't stop news vans from lining the street outside Westlake's gates. "I saw you on Channel 5 last night," said her science partner, sliding over a notebook. "My mum says you're brave." Maya nodded with a forced smile, but inside, conflicting emotions battled for dominance. Part of her felt proud for standing her ground at Southern National Bank, for not backing down when Linda Brown had dismissed her. Yet another part felt deeply wounded by the humiliation she'd experienced, the way Officer Sanchez had treated her like a criminal, and how Jennifer Davis had stood by silently, reinforcing the manager's suspicions. At night, lying in bed, doubts crept in like shadows. Was she now defined by this single incident? Would she forever be that girl from the bank video? Some comments online called her privileged because of her mother's position. Others praised her for exposing discrimination. The young student wondered which version of herself was real: the victim, the hero, or just a girl who wanted to open a bank account. "It'll blow over," her father had assured her, but Maya wasn't convinced. The weight of unexpected fame pressed down on her shoulders as she scrolled through social media, seeing her name in hashtags and her face in memes. The internal tug-of-war between pride and pain followed her through the hallways of Westlake, into classrooms, and back home again. For a girl who had once worried about math tests and friendship bracelets, the sudden spotlight felt both empowering and terrifying, a burden she hadn't asked to carry but couldn't put down. Angela Silver Johnson sat in the living room of their spacious Atlanta home, watching Maya scroll through yet another news article about their experience at Southern National Bank. The weight of realization pressed heavily on her shoulders. As CEO of Johnson Holdings, she had deliberately kept Maya sheltered from the family's influence and wealth, hoping her daughter would develop her own identity first. "I failed you," Angela said softly, placing her coffee mug on the glass table. "I thought I was protecting you, but I was just keeping you unprepared for the world we live in." Maya looked up from her device, her expression a mixture of confusion and curiosity. "What do you mean?" "The way Linda Brown treated you at the bank. That's something I've dealt with my entire career, even as I built Johnson Holdings. I never wanted you to face that reality so young. The 13-year-old shifted uncomfortably on the sofa. So you think I can't handle it? Angela moved closer to her daughter, choosing her words carefully. No, Maya, I think you handled it beautifully. But now I see that I need to empower you, not just shield you. Over the following weeks, mother and daughter began having deeper conversations during dinner, car rides to Westlake Academy, and weekend walks through their neighborhood. Angela shared stories of her own struggles climbing the corporate ladder, the subtle and not so subtle discrimination she'd faced, and how she'd transformed those challenges into strength. Our name carries weight in this city, she explained one evening, as they sat on their balcony overlooking the Atlanta skyline. With that comes responsibility. Maya sometimes rolled her eyes, resentful of the burden being placed on her young shoulders. I just wanted to open a bank account, she muttered during one particularly intense discussion. And you deserved to do that without question, her mother responded firmly. But now we have a platform. The question is, what will we do with it? Other conversations left Maya inspired. When Angela described how she had used her position to create opportunities for others, Maya's eyes lit up with possibility. She began sketching ideas in her notebook: youth financial workshops, student advocacy groups at Westlake Academy. I never wanted you to be defined solely as Angela Johnson's daughter, the CEO admitted one night. But I was wrong to hide the power that comes with our family's position. Knowledge is protection too. Maya nodded slowly, understanding dawning in her expression. I think I would have been less scared that day if I'd known who we were. And I would have been less scared for you if I'd prepared you better, Angela replied, embracing her daughter tightly, both of them growing stronger through their shared vulnerability. After 3 months of thorough investigation, Southern National Bank's Board of Directors, led by Robert Williams, announced a comprehensive overhaul of their customer service policies. The press conference, held in the bank's main lobby where Maya Johnson had once stood terrified, now served as a symbol of transformation. The new initiatives included mandatory sensitivity training for all employees, youth-focused outreach programs in local schools, and a revolutionary First Account program designed specifically for young customers. What happened to Maya Johnson was unacceptable, Robert declared to a room packed with journalists. And today marks our commitment to ensuring it never happens again. Behind him stood a newly diverse executive team, carefully selected to reflect the community they served. The bank's transformation wasn't just cosmetic. Every teller received specialized training on how to properly verify identification and handle young customers with respect. Security protocols were updated to protect privacy while maintaining safety. Most importantly, the bank established a customer advocacy office where complaints could be addressed without fear of dismissal. Meanwhile, Angela Silver Johnson channeled her outrage into action. The CEO of Johnson Holdings launched Future Finance, a national financial literacy program targeting underserved communities. Using her daughter's experience as both cautionary tale and inspiration, she developed curriculum materials that quickly gained adoption in schools across the country. Our children deserve to understand money and their rights, Angela explained during her appearance on Morning America. Her commanding presence and authentic passion resonated with viewers nationwide. What happened to Maya happens every day to children who don't have powerful parents to defend them. The program taught young people not just financial basics, but also how to advocate for themselves in institutions traditionally designed for adults. Angela's corporate connections ensured the program received substantial funding, allowing it to reach communities that needed it most. Maya herself contributed to the curriculum, adding sections about confidence and self-advocacy based on her own painful experience. Though still processing her trauma, she found healing in knowing her story was creating positive change. The media coverage continued, with Angela becoming a regular guest on talk shows and financial programs. She skillfully balanced promoting the initiative while protecting her daughter from excessive exposure. Each appearance emphasized the same core message: Financial institutions must treat all customers with dignity, regardless of age or appearance. As Southern National Bank implemented its reforms, other financial institutions across Atlanta began reviewing their own policies. The ripple effect spread beyond banking, sparking conversations about how various institutions treated young people, especially those of color. What had begun as one child's humiliation was transforming into a movement for institutional change, exactly what Angela had intended all along. Maya Johnson stood at the podium of Westlake Academy's auditorium, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. 3 months ago, she would have rather disappeared than speak in front of her entire school. But today was different. The once shy 13-year-old adjusted the microphone and shared her story. The humiliation at Southern National Bank, the police involvement, and how her mother had arrived like a force of nature. "I thought I'd done something wrong, just by existing in that space," she explained to the captivated audience. "But I learned that sometimes the world isn't fair, and when that happens, we have to speak up." As applause filled the room, Maya caught sight of Angela Silver Johnson in the back row, eyes glistening with pride. Their relationship had deepened through this ordeal. Their evening conversations about privilege and responsibility had transformed Maya's understanding of her family's influence. The following week, Maya visited a community center in downtown Atlanta, where children from less privileged backgrounds gathered to hear her speak. Here, her message took on new meaning. "It doesn't matter if your parents own a company or not," Maya told them, her confidence growing with each word. "You deserve respect, you have rights, and you should never be afraid to ask for help." A small girl raised her hand. "Weren't you scared when they called the police?" "Terrified," Maya admitted, "but being scared doesn't mean you're wrong." These moments of connection healed something in Maya that the viral videos and news coverage couldn't touch. When a boy from the neighborhood described being followed in a store, Maya shared techniques her mother had taught her for maintaining dignity in uncomfortable situations. By her 5th presentation, Maya no longer needed note cards. Her words flowed naturally as she encouraged young people to document unfair treatment, know their rights, and build support networks. The students at Martin Luther King Jr. Middle School gave her a standing ovation. But Maya found more satisfaction in the quiet conversations afterward, when kids approached her with their own stories. Angela watched this transformation with a mixture of sorrow and hope. She had wanted to protect her daughter from these harsh realities, but seeing Maya turn pain into purpose filled her with unexpected joy. "I don't speak because I'm special," Maya told a reporter from the Atlanta Tribune after one event. "I speak because what happened to me happens to kids like me every day. The only difference is my mum could walk in and change things. Not everyone has that privilege." With each speech, the trembling girl with the envelope became more distant, replaced by a young woman who understood her voice was her most powerful asset. Linda Brown sat in her apartment, staring at the rejection email on her device, the 5th one this month. Since the incident with Maya Johnson, her name had become toxic in Atlanta's financial circle. The once respected branch manager of Southern National Bank now couldn't even secure an interview at the smallest credit union in the city. Every morning, she avoided the local news and scrolled past social media notifications. The videos of her confrontation with Maya and Angela Silver Johnson had been viewed millions of times. Comment sections were brutal, with strangers dissecting her every word and gesture from that day. Her professional reputation, built over 15 years in banking, had crumbled in less than 15 minutes. "We regret to inform you that we've decided to pursue other candidates," read the latest email. Linda closed her laptop with a sigh. Her savings were dwindling, and her rent was due next week. The severance package from Southern National had been minimal. The board had made it clear they were cutting ties completely. She'd tried applying to banks in neighboring cities, even considered moving to another state, but a quick internet search of her name revealed dozens of news articles about the incident. The banking community was smaller than she'd realized, and word had spread far beyond Atlanta. Meanwhile, Jennifer Davis had taken a different path. The former teller had publicly acknowledged her role in the incident, admitting she'd failed to speak up when she should have. Unlike her former boss, Jennifer had shown immediate remorse, which resonated with the public. "I was afraid of losing my job if I questioned Linda," Jennifer had explained in an interview that went viral. "But staying silent made me complicit, and I have to live with that." Jennifer now volunteered 3 evenings a week at a financial literacy program for underserved communities. She declined other banking positions, instead working part-time at a local bookstore while studying social work at a community college. Her journey of redemption had become its own small story of hope within the larger narrative. For Linda, there was no such redemption arc. She'd attempted to defend her actions in one disastrous interview, claiming she was just following protocol, which only intensified the backlash. Her former colleagues avoided her calls, and friends gradually stopped reaching out. As evening fell, Linda opened her refrigerator to find it nearly empty. Tomorrow, she would need to apply for jobs outside the financial sector, perhaps retail or customer service. The irony wasn't lost on her that she, who had wielded such authority over customers like Maya, would now have to serve others with a smile, regardless of how they treated her. In the months following the incident, Atlanta underwent a subtle but profound transformation. Financial institutions across the city began examining their policies with newfound scrutiny. Southern National Bank's public reckoning had sent ripples through the entire industry, with executives nervously reviewing their own practices before they became the next viral scandal. Maya Johnson, once just a 13-year-old student with savings, had become something of a local celebrity. When she walked through Westlake Academy's hallways, younger students would whisper and point, "That's her, the girl who stood up to the bank," they'd say with admiration in their voices. What touched Maya most deeply weren't the occasional news interviews or the recognition, but the letters. Dozens arrived each week from children and teenagers who shared similar experiences of being dismissed or disrespected by adults simply because of their age or appearance. "Your story gave me courage," one 12-year-old boy from South Atlanta wrote. "Yesterday, I went to open my account, and when they tried to turn me away, I stood my ground just like you did." Meanwhile, across town at Johnson Holdings, Angela Silva Johnson's financial literacy initiative had expanded beyond anyone's expectations. What began as a local response to her daughter's experience had grown into a national movement. The program provided educational materials to schools in 23 states, teaching young people about their financial rights and responsibilities. "What happened to my daughter shouldn't happen to anyone," Angela told a packed auditorium during a financial inclusion conference. "But the silver lining is that we've started a conversation that was long overdue." The political landscape responded as well. 3 state representatives introduced bills specifically addressing discrimination in financial services, with Maya's case cited repeatedly during committee hearings. The Johnson Protocol, as one bill was informally known, would require financial institutions to establish clear procedures for serving minor customers. At community meetings throughout Atlanta, customers shared stories of confronting bank managers about questionable practices. The balance of power had shifted, if only slightly. People who had previously remained silent about unfair treatment now spoke up, recording interactions on their devices and demanding accountability. Robert Williams, still serving as bank president, had become an unlikely ally in the push for reform. "What happened at our branch was unacceptable," he acknowledged during an industry panel, "but it's given us the opportunity to lead by example in creating more inclusive banking practices." For Maya, watching her painful experience transform into positive change helped heal the wounds of that terrible day. She wasn't just a symbol anymore. She'd become an agent of change in her own right. 6 months had passed since that fateful Tuesday morning. Maya Johnson stood once again before the gleaming glass doors of Southern National Bank, no longer the trembling 13-year-old clutching an envelope, but a young woman who had found her voice in the most unexpected way. As she pushed open the doors, the atmosphere couldn't have been more different. The security guard nodded respectfully. Several employees looked up with recognition and welcoming smiles. The marble counter where she had once been humiliated now seemed less intimidating. "Good morning, Miss Johnson," said the new branch manager, Thomas Cooper, extending his hand. "We've been expecting you." Maya's mother, Angela Silver Johnson, stood beside her daughter, watching with quiet pride as Maya confidently presented her identification and paperwork. The CEO's presence still commanded attention, but today she was here simply as a mother witnessing her daughter's milestone. "I'd like to open my first account," Maya announced, her voice steady. The same counter where Linda Brown had once questioned her integrity now served as the platform for her financial independence. As they completed the paperwork, Maya noticed a poster on the wall featuring her own face alongside information about youth financial literacy programs. The bank that had once rejected her now celebrated her story. The irony wasn't lost on her. "Your account comes with our new student financial education package," the teller explained. "Actually, you inspired it." Angela squeezed her daughter's shoulder gently. Their relationship had deepened through this ordeal. The long conversations about privilege, responsibility, and courage had transformed them both. "Sign here," the teller said, sliding the final form across the counter. As Maya's pen touched the paper, she caught sight of Jennifer Davis across the lobby. The former teller, now volunteering with community outreach programs, gave her a small, apologetic nod. Maya returned it with a slight smile. Some wounds had begun to heal. With the final signature complete, Maya was handed her first debit card and account information. What had started as a simple desire to prove her responsibility had catalyzed change throughout the city's financial institutions and beyond. "Congratulations," Angela whispered. "I couldn't be prouder." Walking out of the bank, Maya realized she carried something far more valuable than money. Her experience had transformed her from a shy student into someone whose voice mattered. The videos that had gone viral, the speeches she'd given at Westlake Academy and community centers, the legislation that politicians were now drafting, all had started with her standing her ground. She was no longer defined by that moment of injustice, but by what she had helped create from it. Maya Johnson had become exactly what her mother had always seen in her, a leader, a change-maker, and a beacon for justice in her community.